One of the times I had met this Chetnik General, I learned, this is him here. But I didn't know it was it because I couldn't speak English, and he had a bodyguard, they called him, and they were riding horses. I know the general was riding a beautiful animal, and they brought me a horse, which seemed to be a kind of sluggish, and I guess with this stiff leg and so on, and I was pretty thankful that I had had little experiences with horses. In Idaho, after we migrated there from Oklahoma in the Great Depression, Dad bought a wild stallion from the Oahe Mountains, and that got to be my job to break that wild stallion. So I had a little bit, not that I was a bronc rider, I didn't go for that at all, but I knew how to ride. So they were going to help me get across a bad area where the Germans were pretty thick. They're the ones that took me back where my plane was shot down. We stood on a mountaintop. And I'll come to this later in the story. When I got with them, they brought me this horse, and the leader, he went and broke a big tree branch and handed it to me. Now we were stealing our way through the mountains at the time, and I think I knew, I could tell the old gentle animal that I was riding why he was giving me that tree branch. So we started moving on westward toward the Adriatic Sea, and finally the general had to stop, and his aide, I guess it was, went ahead. It was gone about 15 or 20 minutes, and came back and motioned, "Let's go." So we started toward a river, turns out. And when we got to the river bank, they broke their horses into a full run. And I just couldn't get my horse to run, and it was kind of like a nightmare, because I knew something was about to happen. Anyway, I started using the tree branch, and by the time we got into the deeper water, I was not far behind the general and his aide, and the horses were running at full speed for a while in shallow water, not very far, a few hundred yards, and then we come to a bridge, and we turned underneath the bridge, and the horses had to swim. It wasn't a big river, but it was quite a ways across it, maybe 20 yards or more. But when we got to the other side, after crossing under the bridge, and it was pretty fast running water, swift running water, they went up a mountainside. The horses really had to climb, but the general and his aides, they were quite a ways ahead of me at this time, but I was hanging in there. An odd thing, kinda. I don't believe either one ever looked back at after we once started running. Just why, I don't know, but I had that feeling. And I also kind of felt like I'd been thrown into to sink or swim water. But one thing I wanted to add is, when we got to the top of the mountain, or at least to a plateau where they stopped, the general looked back smiling like I'd done all right, I felt. But that's when I thought maybe they'd thrown me in the water, sink or swim, and I'd made it. And this is a true story. We looked down, like I told you, to see my plane being dismantled and put on a flatbed rail car. These two, the general and his aide, reared their ponies, and I've written it just like in the movies, and they would fire their pistols in the air, touting the Germans down there in the town. Let's see if Okay, I want to get to when I met Moon Mullins, my buddy that got shot down the same time. And then we got with General Mihailovich. King Peter had left General Mihailovich to run the country, and King Peter had gone to England to try to work from there. We was followed with these ox-drawn carts, wooden wheels and everything, and an American had bailed out to try to help airmen get out of there. I have a storybook of just been published, the Forgotten 500, talking about us. Over 500 airmen was saved by the Chetniks, just like the story I'm telling. But the Chetniks, the Partisans, backed by the Russians, was following us. Every night I'd hear our American transport planes dropping supplies for the Chetniks, but the Chetniks were on the run, and the Partisans were getting the supplies are being dropped. Probably not that much of them, but there was K rations pulled by oxen in these wagons, and after we was on the run for maybe 3 or 4 days, I remember walking and laying down to rest, and when the last man of the troop they had their soldiers without shoes, most of them, and no ammunition. It was like the last guy would wake me, and I'd go real fast to get to the head of and Moon was with me, my Moon Mullins, my buddy, and then we'd get to the head of the line, we'd rest again, and that was the way it was going. And I want to just cover one time. The Partisans were shooting grenades from up on the mountain down on us, and they took no prisoners. And this young lad, he couldn't have been over 15, got hit. He was bleeding pretty bad, and I was trying to, people were tearing pieces of their clothes, trying to stop the bleeding, and eventually we had to go and leave him. And like I say, they took no prisoners. I've often thought how, and this was the civil war going on between the Yugoslav people. I guess we've all heard what a bad time Yugoslavia has had and still are having. I kind of helped pick out a landing field, although I think it had been used before. When I wrote my story, I thought I was just one of the ones that did the maiden thing on it, but I believe it had been used before. 2 C-47s, American C-47 Goonie birds, we call them, C-47s, like the old transports the airlines used. On the field, we had no radio contact. There was some Morse code radio, dot dash, with this person that had bailed out to help us out, had a Morse code radio, and that they had that communication, no voice. I helped build the bonfires and light them to show the smoke signals when the the 2 planes was coming to pick us up. By that time there was quite a few of us, and I wanted them to land uphill, but we had no contact, like I said, and the slight wind caused them to land downhill. And when you're landing downhill, it seems like you're coming to the plane, you want to get it down, and the ground keeps getting away from you. And one of the planes landed okay. The second one, though, landed a little fast, went into the bushes, trees, and got stuck there. We had word that the Germans were on to us and were coming for us. So things were fever pitch, and a true story. I'm helping, me and others, trying to. This plane it had pushed over some pretty good size, maybe 3-inch tree, because it was part of it sticking up in the wing of this one plane, and there was a Chetnik there with an axe. The guy, he was trying to cut this limb, and it glanced off of the limb. I remember this so clearly, and went through the wing of the plane and actually started a gas leak. Not a gas leak, it was a gas leak. And then finally, there was an old truck backed up to us with a big rope, and I believe that was before a World War time truck, an old truck like you see in the museums way back. And we got the plane back out, and the guy with the axe helped beat the wing. Also, the wingtip was damaged quite a bit out, beat it out. And that was the one that Moon and I got to ride in as we took off back down into that blind canyon with that damaged plane. Now, incidentally, when we got in the plane, both planes, every one of us took our shoes off and left them for those people. They had no shoes. They were pretty poor. But we got airborne, and pretty soon I could look out the window, and there was the Mustangs crisscrossing over us like I had done before in the Mustangs. And I knew we were pretty safe, and we got back to Italy, and I was able to fly again with my unit.